Dude, and it literally like pisses me off when people are like, she's not the face of the league.
Who would be?
What? But when people try to argue that she's not the face of our league,
Yeah.
or if our league would be where we're at without her, you're done.
Hey, Sophie. If they didn't like you then, they sure aren't going to like you now.
Caitlin Clark is under fire online, with criticism coming in from every direction. Some veteran players have even started to question if she truly deserves the spotlight as the new face of the WNBA. The chatter was getting loud, until one of her own teammates decided enough was enough. Sophie Cunningham took to her podcast and delivered what might go down as the most jaw-dropping defense in the history of the league. In just 2 words, she didn't just clap back, she leveled the entire conversation. What she said hit hard, cut through the noise, and sent ripples through every locker room in the W.
Calls out the old guard. She calls out the people out there who refuse to say Caitlin Clark is the face of the league.
But before we get to the moment that blew the lid off everything, it's important to understand just how intense and personal the backlash against Caitlin Clark had become. This isn't just any rookie we're talking about. Clark helped ignite a movement, skyrocketing attention for women's basketball and drawing record-breaking numbers to WNBA games. She changed the landscape, fast. Yet somehow, instead of universal praise, she became a target. And not just from online trolls hiding behind screens. The criticism was coming from inside the house. Seasoned veterans, former league icons, and even mainstream analysts were lining up to take their shots. She's overrated. Others have been doing this for years. She's hogging the spotlight. The sentiment was clear, some people didn't think she earned the attention. But the irony? Many of those same voices were now benefiting from the very spotlight she helped create.
Why we watching women's basketball, it's not just because of one person, it's because of me too, and I want y'all to realize that.
So she's already had an extra year to break that record.
The envy surrounding Caitlin Clark was so obvious, you could practically feel it in the air. What started as passive-aggressive commentary quickly spiraled into something uglier. She became the focal point of one of the most hostile narratives in all of professional sports. Every move she made was dissected, every success downplayed, and the resentment? It was palpable. Then things escalated, from words to actions. On the court, Clark wasn't just facing competitive defense anymore. She was being physically targeted. One moment in particular stood out, a tense matchup against the Connecticut Sun. During a heated play, Marina Mabrey shoved Clark to the floor with force that clearly went beyond routine contact. This wasn't just part of the game. It felt deliberate. It felt personal. And it sent a clear message. The pushback against Clark wasn't just verbal, it had turned physical.
Caitlin Clark gets poked in the eye, Marina Mabrey doesn't even see what happens and she just decides to clean Caitlin Clark out.
The message couldn't have been clearer. The league was going to push Caitlin Clark to her limits and find out if the so-called Golden Girl could actually handle the grind. But just when it looked like Clark would have to face the fire alone, the entire story flipped. Enter Sophie Cunningham, Clark's teammate, vocal leader, and the Indiana Fever's unofficial enforcer. She had been watching the disrespect pile up. And at that moment, it wasn't about stats or strategy anymore. This had become personal. It was about standing up for one of their own, not as a teammate, but like family. Then came the breaking point. Midway through the third quarter, after another hard and unnecessary hit sent Clark crashing to the floor, Cunningham snapped. What followed wasn't just retaliation, it was instinct. Without hesitation, Cunningham charged in like a protector defending her younger sister. Tempers flared, bodies collided, and the court erupted in chaos. But to Fever fans and players alike? It wasn't mayhem, it was loyalty in motion.
Cunningham situation does not happen. And Sophie Cunningham, in fairness, did instigate a brawl. She did do something to start a brawl. So, to say Sophie Cunningham, did not deserve a flagrant 2, no. Sophie Cunningham deserved a flagrant 2, 100%. You can't do that to somebody going full speed.
Whistles blew. Technicals were handed out like candy. Players were tossed. The court had turned into a battleground, and the officials could barely contain the fallout. What unfolded was pure chaos, the kind that gets replayed on every sports show for days. But as wild as that moment was, it was just the opening salvo in Sophie Cunningham's fight against the rising tide of Clark criticism. That scuffle? That was personal. But what came next? That was calculated. Cunningham wasn't done, not even close. She had something else to say, and this time, she wanted the entire league, and everyone watching, to hear it loud and clear.
By the way, sometimes I've just got to say it. Sometimes I feel like she's the only player
in the entire league that actually and truly has Caitlin Clark's back.
After the game, most expected the usual post-game routine, a few safe answers about team effort and chemistry, maybe a nod to keeping emotions in check. But Sophie Cunningham wasn't interested in playing nice. She walked into that press room with fire in her eyes and zero interest in diplomacy. Instead of sidestepping the issue, she went straight for the jugular, not at the opposing team, but at the officials. In a moment that instantly went viral, she called them out with precision and fury. "They're not protecting the face of the WNBA," she said flatly, her voice slicing through the room with the weight of truth and frustration. "And if the refs aren't going to do their job, then I'll do it for them." It wasn't just a quote, it was a declaration. A challenge. And a warning to anyone else thinking about targeting Caitlin Clark again.
Tomorrow, you're on the Las Vegas Strip. What can the Las Vegas expect from Sophie?
You know what? I'm just gonna be me. I don't go in there trying to predetermine anything. I'm dialed in. I need to focus on hitting my shots, making sure I'm executing the schemes right. I'm not focused on the extracurricular activities. And you know what? During that, it was just part of the game. I think the refs had a lot to do with that. It was a build up for a couple of years now of them just not protecting, the star player of the WNBA. And so, at the end of the day, I'm going to protect my teammates. That's what I do, and I'm a team player. So
the basketball world was already on edge. The altercation had sparked headlines, debates, and non-stop commentary. But what no one realized at the time, Sophie Cunningham was just getting started. The real bombshell hadn't even dropped yet, and when it did, it would send shockwaves through the entire WNBA. Enter Cunningham's brand new podcast, Show Me Something. On paper, it seemed like your typical athlete platform, the kind where players give polished interviews, stick to safe topics, and keep the sponsors happy. But that's not what anyone got. Instead, listeners were hit with raw, unfiltered emotion from a veteran who'd clearly reached her breaking point. Cunningham wasn't holding back, not anymore. She'd had enough of the subtle digs, the media shade, and the league's reluctance to fully back the rookie revolution. Then came the topic, who truly represents the face of the WNBA? And you could feel it, the energy shifted. Her tone sharpened, her voice rising with each word. "It literally pisses me off when people say she's not the face of the league." What? It wasn't just frustration. It was personal, it was passionate, and it was powerful. And with that, Cunningham didn't just join the conversation, she took control of it.
It just feels like people are jealous of this new little wave of...
They are, but I just hate that because, this is what we've always wanted as a league. So, who cares who gets the credit? And if you're smart, you're making money off of them.
Yeah.
You are literally making money from the viewership.
And what she made the chirp was about how she didn't help plan the fucking...
Who cares?
And then it happened, the moment that blew up the internet and set the basketball world ablaze. When Sophie Cunningham was asked how she felt about critics downplaying Caitlin Clark's impact on the league, she didn't hesitate. There was no measured response. No PR filter. She went all in. "If you don't see what she's doing for this league," Cunningham said, her voice cutting like steel, "you're just being willfully ignorant." The tone? Lethal. The delivery? Unapologetic. Within minutes, the clip went viral. Social media exploded, with fans, analysts, and players all weighing in. The soundbite was everywhere, podcasts, highlight reels, even mainstream news coverage. It was the kind of moment that doesn't just make headlines, it changes narratives. But Cunningham wasn't finished. She kept going, tearing apart every tired talking point thrown at Clark with the precision of someone who'd been holding back for way too long. This wasn't a rant. It was a reckoning, the kind that made it crystal clear, disrespect Caitlin Clark, and you're going to hear from Sophie Cunningham. Loudly, publicly, and without apology.
There's really good, well-known people in our league. I'm not discrediting them. We have a lot of in our league.
Sophie Cunningham made one thing crystal clear, this wasn't about tearing anyone down. "There are incredible, well-known players in this league," she said. "I'm not discrediting them. We've got a lot of badass women out here." It was a moment of recognition, a veteran acknowledging the deep talent pool in the WNBA. But it was also the calm before the storm. Because what came next? That was the knockout punch, and it hit with force. Cunningham delivered her final statement with the kind of authority only a seasoned vet could. No hesitation. No sugarcoating. And no room left for counterarguments. The effect was immediate. Social media went into full meltdown mode. Twitter timelines were flooded with reactions, hot takes, and stunned silence as people tried to wrap their heads around what they'd just witnessed. This wasn't some rookie clapping back at criticism. This was a 7-year pro, someone who'd earned every minute on the floor, stepping up and obliterating the narrative that Caitlin Clark didn't belong at the top. But what made Cunningham's defense so undeniable wasn't just the emotion behind it, it was the cold, hard truth she brought with her. Clark hadn't just shown promise. She had reshaped the league. She drew millions of new viewers, shattered attendance records, and brought unprecedented mainstream visibility to women's basketball, all in a matter of months. The numbers told the story. The impact was real. And Cunningham was done watching people dismiss it out of jealousy, pride, or politics. Her message? You don't have to love Caitlin Clark. But denying her influence means denying reality, and that's not going to fly anymore.
Like, and there's so much clickbait, especially surrounding Caitlin. And so, like, it's just like, just be nice. Like, why can't people just be nice? Yeah. That's what I don't. Coming from the girl who
I was just saying we just for 2 hours about how you fucking beat someone up.
Just be nice. It's not that hard.
The reaction from the basketball community was split almost evenly. On one side, Caitlin Clark supporters erupted in celebration, as if their team had just clinched a championship. Finally, a seasoned voice was articulating the frustrations with pinpoint accuracy, and they loved every second of it. Meanwhile, the critics scrambled, desperately trying to come up with comebacks that didn't make them look out of touch or outright wrong. What made this moment so powerful was the timing. This wasn't Cunningham stepping up during Clark's rookie jitters. No, this was a teammate defending her after witnessing months of needless criticism and even physical targeting. The message was unmistakable: if you mess with Clark, you're taking on the entire Indiana Fever family. That podcast clip didn't just make waves, it dominated sports media for days. ESPN, Fox Sports, CBS, everyone was dissecting Cunningham's fiery defense. But more importantly, it began shifting the conversation. No longer was the debate centered on whether Clark deserved the hype. Instead, the focus turned to acknowledging her undeniable impact on the sport. Soon, other players followed Cunningham's lead, speaking out in Clark's defense in ways they hadn't before. Veterans who had stayed silent during the early criticism began openly recognizing what everyone had been reluctant to admit: Clark had raised the profile of the entire league, and the petty jealousy had to end. What made Cunningham's approach resonate so deeply wasn't just her blunt honesty. It was the authenticity behind it. This wasn't some rehearsed PR statement or carefully crafted soundbite. It was a teammate who had seen Clark weather unfair attacks with grace while changing the game itself, and who refused to pretend the emperor was clothed when he clearly wasn't. But Cunningham didn't stop there. In interviews and appearances that followed, she continued calling out the double standards Clark faced. When skeptics questioned whether Clark was tough enough for the WNBA, Cunningham pointed to the brutal fouls Clark had absorbed without complaint. When analysts accused her of getting special treatment, Sophie reminded everyone of the physical targeting she had witnessed firsthand. What unfolded between Cunningham and Clark became one of the season's most compelling stories. The veteran enforcer and the superstar rookie fed off each other's energy, building undeniable chemistry that shone through every game. What began as one teammate defending another evolved into a statement about loyalty, truth, and standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. Cunningham could have stayed quiet, avoiding controversy and letting Clark fight her battles alone. Instead, she used her platform to shut down the nonsense once and for all. The ripple effects of Cunningham's defense went far beyond that viral podcast clip. It changed how media covered Clark, how fans talked about her, and how players across the league treated the rising star. The toxic